Hello guys, welcome to the first video tutorial on Python programming for beginners. And in this video I'm going to give you an introduction to Python and how you can download and install Python on your Windows operating system. So let's get started. So Python is widely used general purpose high level language, and its design philosophy emphasizes code readability, and its syntax allows programmers to express concept in fewer lines of code than would be possible in a language such as C. So let me give you a little overview of Python first. So Python is a scripting language, and it includes object-oriented concepts also, and it's a portable and very powerful language, and it's often called a programming language for beginners because it's really easy to learn Python, and it's really easy to implement. If you have little codes or a little concept which you want to implement very fast, you can use Python to implement them. And it has mixed features like programming languages like Java and Perl screams. And what are the uses of Python? It can be used to make system utilities. It can be used to make GUIs. GUIs stands for graphical user interface, and there are some IDEs which you can use, or which there are some platform which you can use to create GUI. So these are some of the platform on which you can make GUI application. For example, Qt platform, or Windows platform, or GTK platform. You can make interactive GUIs using Python. You can also use Python to make internet scripting as a internet scripting language, and you can also use Python as a embedded scripting language. Even you can use Python as a database programming language, artificial intelligence, and image processing. So there are widely used implementations of Python, and you can use Python in many many fields. So it's very good idea to learn Python, and it's really easy to learn Python. That's why you can learn Python if you are a beginner in programming. Okay, so let's see how we can install Python on our Windows operating system. So just open your favorite browser and search for Python. And the first link here you will find is www.python.org. This is the official website of Python. Just click here, and in here you will be able to see the overview of Python by browsing these tabs. But the tab we are interested in right now is this download tab. And in here there are two versions. One is the very latest version, and one was a little bit slightly older version but very stable version also. What we are going to do is we are going to download this latest version. So I'm going to just click this download button, and it will download this Python 3.4.1 at the time of making this video. This is the latest version, and once this download is complete, we will be able to install Python on our system. So now download is complete. I will just run this, and it's preparing to install. And this is the first option, or first wizard, Python setup wizard you will be able to see. And for now I just want to use install for all users, and I will click next. And in here, this is the default location where Python will be installed, and this is the name of the folder because it's version 3.4. So the folder name will be Python 3.4. Okay, just click next, and then these are all the utilities which will be installed. If you want to customize, you can customize it, but I will leave them as default, and I will click next, and the installation will start. And it's saying that it will take several minutes to install Python, so you need to wait until its process is going on, and once the process completes, I will go through the next steps. So let's wait for some time, and I will pause the video for now. So while this process is going on, I will give you a brief of compilation and how this Python language interprets or compile itself. Okay, so if you have learned any other languages like C, C++ or Java, you know that this language is a compile, first you need to compile this file like Java or some other program, and then once you compile your program, it will produce a executable file, and then you can run this executable file and you will be able to see this kind of a result. But Python is a interpreted language. That means you don't need to compile your Python program because it's a interpreted language. It will directly you will be able to run directly your program, and it is a runtime compilation it will do. So if any error occurs, you will be able to see them only at runtime. Okay, so there is no need to compile, or there is no feature to compile your code in Python. It will just execute your program directly. So this is the little difference between the programming languages like Java, C or C++, that in those languages you need to compile your program, but in Python instead it's an interpreted language, so you don't need to compile this. It will be executed at runtime. Okay, now our installation is finished, so I will just click finish. Now once your installation is complete, you will be able to go to your start menu here, and you will be able to see Python in these options. Otherwise you can go to all programs, and in here you will be able to see Python and whatever version you have downloaded for Python. So I can see this folder called Python space 3.4, which is a version for Python I have installed, and when I click this folder I can see a few files here. So there is something called Python command line, and I will click this first, Python command line first, and this is a command line tool which you can use to execute your Python scripting language or Python programs, right? So for example, I want to execute something here. What I can do, I can just print something. So I will write print, and in the brackets, in the earlier version before 3 before version 3, you don't need to give these brackets to execute your message, but after version 3 you need to use these brackets in order to print your message, like using print function. So print is a built-in function to print your string or whatever you write in these brackets. So I will just use double quotes and I will write hello world, and when I press enter it will give me hello world, right? So there are something you will notice when I have printed hello world, that First, you don't need any semicolon or any ending declaration in Python. So if you have or if you are used to some languages like C, C++ or Java, you know that you need to end your line using semicolons, right? But in your Python program, you don't need to use semicolons here. And the other thing I've already told you, that you don't need to compile your program. You just hit enter and it will run your program, right? So this is a command line tool. The same functionality you can use a GUI tool also to write the program. So if you want to develop your program using command line, you can use this Python command line. I will just close it for now. And I can even use, or Python even provides a GUI which is called idle to program Python. So I will just go to this folder once again and I will click this idle Python GUI, and it will open the same shell command, but it's more interactive and you will be able to see the uh, same command line structure here. Now for starting, because I think these fonts are a little bit smaller, so I can make them bigger by going into the option configure idle, and in here I can change the font size of my shell, right? So for example, I want to increase it to 16 so that I can see better and you can also see better. Let's make it 18 even, so you will be able to see more better. Okay, so once this is done, in here also you can just write print, and in the brackets you can just give your message, for example, hello world. And whenever I have or when I write this, you will be able to see different colors for different structure. So because print is a function, it will be highlighted in different color, and hello world is a string, so it will be highlighted in green color, for example. So this in this way you can read the program in a better way, and this is why we generally use this Python GUI, or which is called idle, to program. Okay, and I press enter and it gives me once again the result hello world, right? Hello guys, welcome to the second video tutorial on Python programming for beginners. In the last video, I have given you introduction to Python, and I have shown you how you can install Python on your Windows operating system. And I have given you a little example how you can use this Python IDE called idle for the first time. Okay, so in this video I'm going to continue and I'm going to show you how you can use numbers and math in Python. So if you are familiar with this, last time I have shown you how to open this Python shell, right? If you don't know how to open this shell, once again I'm going to tell you. You just need to go to your start menu and just go to Python folder and just start this idle Python GUI from here, and it will open this kind of GUI shell or Python shell here. Now let's get started and let's see how we can do math in Python. So like simple mathematics, Python can also do the maths for you. So for example, you want to add 5 plus 98, it will give you the answer 103. You can even add minus values. So minus 34
plus 4, for example, and it will give you the answer 30. Okay. In the same way, you can do the subtraction. 50, 56 minus 34, it will give you the answer, and it will also give you the negative value if you provide the value such as, for example, 34 minus 56, it will give you the negative value. Okay. Now for division, uh, what you can do, you can just write, for example, 21 divided by, so this is the symbol we use for divisions, which is slash. For example, 21 divided by 7 is 3, which gives you the answer. And if you want to divide the number and get some decimal values, for example, 23 divided by 7 will give you 3.28 something, right? So this will also give you decimal values. Now, for example, you don't want this these decimal values after the division. You just want to see the whole value or the integer. What you can do, you can just write 23 double slash 7, and this will give you the whole number, which is 3. Okay. You can even, so this number is a integer. And what is an integer? Integer is the whole number, right? You can even use decimal values, which are called float in programming. Float values are values which have some decimal points. For example, 57.2345 or whatever, divided by 3.22222. Okay, and press enter, and it will give you an answer. So you can even divide decimal values like this. Okay, and remember this, whenever you want to get the whole number, just use double slashes. Now for multiplication, multiplication is also simple. For example, you want to multiply two numbers, 56 multiply. So for multiplication, you use this asterisk symbol or star symbol simply. So this star symbol or asterisk symbol will be used as a multiplication symbol. Okay. So 56 multiplied by 4 is 224. So you can use multiplication like this. Okay. Now, for example, you want to get the exponent of some number. What is an exponent? Exponent is something like, for example, 2 exponent 3 is 2 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 2. Okay, so 2 into 2 into 2. This is the exponent. So you can do it like this, and it will give you the answer. But if you want the exponent, for example, 2 to the power 15, how you can do? You can do something like this. 2 multiplied by 2 not like this, but 2 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 2 15 times, and this will be lengthy, right? So the simple way to find the exponent is use double asterisks or double stars and then the power. So 2 to the power 15 is 32768. Okay, or 2 to the power 5 is 32. So this double star or double asterisk you can use to get the power or exponent of your numbers. Okay. Now you may be wondering what may be the order of your operations. Which operation will take place when you have multiple operation at the same time? For example, I want to do 3 multiplied by 4 plus 5 minus 6 and then divided by 1, or not 1 but 2, for example. So what will be the order? Will 3 into 4 will happen first, or 4 plus 5 will happen 4 plus 5 will happen first, or 5 minus 6 will happen first, or what will be the priority? Okay, or what will be the order of this operation. So like simple mathematics, if you remember when you were in school, and or if you are in school still, you know this basic formula called PEMDAS. Okay, so this is the order in which your operations will take place. And this P stands for parenthesis, E stands for exponents, M stands for multiplication, D stands for division, A stands for addition, and S stands for subtraction. Okay, and the way you remember this is you can just abbreviate it as please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, if you want to remember this order. Okay, and so this will be the priority, or this will be the order of your operation. So if you want to prioritize something, enclose those operation in the parentheses. So if you want to do 3 plus 4, and then multiplication, or you want to multiply by 5, then the priority of this addition is the most important, or this will happen first because this operation is enclosed in parentheses, and then this will happen. Okay, and then the order will be like PEMDAS, if you can remember. So for example, I want to do something like this: divide by 6 minus 2, then the parenthesis priority will be the first, and then the multiplication, and then the division, and if you have some subtraction, then this will happen at the last. Okay.
Hello guys, welcome to the third video tutorial on Python programming for beginners. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to use variables in Python. So I'm assuming that you don't have any prior programming knowledge. So I'm going to tell you the basics of variables first. So basically, what is a variable? Variable is a container for some value. This value can be an integer. This value can be a string of words. This value can be a float value or different kind of values. So what is a variable? Variable is a container for the values. So for example, how you can declare variable in Python? First of all, you need to give a name of the variable. So for example, I can declare a name of a variable like my variable is equal to, and this is equal to sign you use between the value and the name of the variable. Okay, so this is the name of the variable is equal to, you can assign some value to the variable, for example 30. Now my variable has the value of 30. So my variable is a container for the value 30, right? And generally it's the convention that whenever you use or declare a variable, it's not necessary, but it's a good programming habit that you separate your variable name. If you have something like my variable, the first word of your variable name starts from small letter, and then the second word first letter starts from big or capital case, and the other letters are small. And this way it will work like, for example, I want to give the variable name is equal to my variable name, it will be like this. Okay, so it's like camel case, it's called a camel case declaration. So start with small letter, and then the second letter, second word first letter is the capital, third word first letter is the capital, just like this. Okay, so just follow the convention like this.
It's not necessary, but it's good. Now when I press enter, now my variable has the value of 30. So once again, when I call my variable and press enter, it gives me 30 because my variable is equal to 30 now. Now Python is a case sensitive language. So if you write my with a capital M variable and press enter, it will give you an error because this variable name is different from this variable name because this is case sensitive. So just remember this. Okay, so these are the two things. Now why we exactly use variable in any programming language? So variables are generally used whenever you don't know what values you are going to deal with. So for example, you are going to deal with some values which are inputted by the users. Now first of all, this variable you can use it as, for example, for adding something. So I can just call my variable plus, so plus 34, and it will give me the result. Yeah, this is, you see, I haven't spelled this my variable correct, so it gives me an error. Okay, so my variable plus 34 and it gives me 64. Okay, so now you can perform math operation using this variable also. Okay, now the real use of this variable, you can you can perform every math operation on this variable because it has some value which is an integer, right? So you can do a variable to the power or exponent 3, it gives the answer, and in the same way it will give you an answer for every math operation. Now the real use, let's see some use for variable. So for example, I declare a variable called uh, value. Okay, and this value is equal to whatever user inputs from uh, the user input. Okay, so how you can provide a user input in Python? You just use the inbuilt function called input. So this is an inbuilt function in Python which will allow you to enter any value. So you can just write enter the value. But there is a problem with this, that this input, whatever user enters, will be a string. Okay, so let me give you an example. When I press enter, now it gives me the prompt that enter the value, and I can enter any value, for example 50, and press enter, and now this value, which is a variable value, has the value of 50. So whenever I call value, it has the value of 50. But notice this value is a string. It's between this single quotes. So whenever I want to perform some addition, so value plus something 20, it will give me an error. See, it gives me an error. Why it's giving me an error? Because this value, which is 50, is a string, because whenever we use input function to input value, it takes this value as a string. Okay, and whenever you see something in single quote, that means it's a string. Whenever you have the single quotes around your value, it's a string. Okay, now in order to convert your string to an integer, you can cast the string. So I'm going to just copy this. You can just copy this and paste it here. And in order to cast this value to an integer, what you do, just go with before your input. So value is equal to, just write int. So this is typecasting of string to the integer. Okay, and just close it from here. Okay, so when you do this, this uh, will be your string. So input will be taken as a string, and this int will convert your string to the integer. Okay, and now when you press enter and you give some value, for example 60, value is equal to 60, and now you call value, not well but value, it has the value of 60. And notice that earlier this 50 is enclosed in single quotes, but this time it's not enclosed in single quotes. That means it's a number, right? Now I can perform some math operation on this like this: value plus 50 multiplied by 60 something. It will not give me an error this time. So always remember, whenever you want an integer as an input, you need to cast this into the integer. And casting means to convert your string to the integer. You can cast this to the float value like this. For example, you can just copy this once again, paste it here, and you can cast this like float. So float is a decimal point value. Okay, so you can cast your value as a float, and now when you enter you can just try 50.134 for whatever, and then call value, and it has the value of 50 point whatever. Okay, so variables are useful whenever you don't know what values you are going to deal with. Okay, hello guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to use built-in modules and functions in Python. So if you have remembered that in the previous videos I have shown you how to calculate the exponent of some value. So for example, I want 2 to the power 3, I can use 2 and then these two asterisks, and then I can write 3, and this means 2 to the exponent 3, and it gives me the value of 8. Okay, but there is a easier way of doing the same thing, and this is by using a built-in functions which are provided by Python. So what is a function? First of all, if you are new to programming, a function is a piece of code which executes some function or some logic. Okay, so a function is a piece of code which executes some logic. So for example, you want to calculate the exponent of 2 like this. You can do it like this, or you can use a built-in function which executes a exponent function, right? So you can use POW, which is power, and this function takes two arguments. First is the value, which is 2, and then the exponent, which is 3, or this means 2 to the power 3. And it also gives you the value uh, 8, which is same, and it's more easier to use this, and it's more easier to understand this expression rather than this, because it's more descriptive, right? Now how do you know that what are the built-in function in Python? Okay, so if you don't know what are the built-in function, there is a command to know what are all built-in functions in Python. And what is this command? This command is, you just need to write dir and then give these two brackets, and in these two brackets just write double underscore, and then just write built ins, and then double underscore once again. and you just need to give this command, and what this command, just press enter, and what this command will return, this command will return all the built-in function which you can use in Python. Okay, so for example, I was using POW, which is a power function, and you can find this POW function here. Okay, this is the power function. So you can see you can calculate hacks. There is a function called ABS to calculate absolute value. So for example, I want to calculate, I will use ABS and I will write 18.6666 and press enter. It gives me the absolute value of ABS. This should be a little bit different. I think it should be like this. And okay, so it gives me the absolute value of the number. Okay, or you can use this print to print something, or you can find this len function to find the length of a string. So I can use len and give some strings. So for example, I can write hello, which is a 5-letter string, 1 2 3 4 5, right? And this length will return the length of this word, which gives 5, right? So and there are some other useful functions like minimum, maximum, slice. So these are all the built-in functions in Python. Now once you know the function that okay, this function exists here, now how you can know that what is the functionality of this function, right? So to know the functionality of the function, what you need to do, you can use a built-in function called help, this help. Okay, so for example, you want to know what this function called max does. Okay, so what you can do, you can just write help, and then in the brackets you can just write the name of the function. For example, you want to know what this function max does, you just write help and in the bracket just write max. Okay, and press enter, and this max you can see here. So this help says that this max is a function which can take more than one argument, multiple argument, and it gives the, I think, maximum value of those arguments, right? So you can see it with a single iteratable argument returns its largest item. Okay, so now I know that when I use a function called max and I can give multiple argument 4 comma 2 comma 1 comma 5 comma 8, and when I press enter it gives me the maximum value, which is 8, right? So in this way you can use this help function to find out what these other built-in function does, or what is the use of these built-in functions, right? Now this is about the uh, function, built-in function. Now there is something called built-in modules. Okay, and these built-in modules are the extra modules which contains extra functions or extra functionalities which you can use whenever you use or whenever you include these modules. So for example, you want to know or you want to calculate the square root of some value. So there is a module called, so for example, you want to know the square root of something. So there is a module called math. You can use it for this. So to include a module, you need to import this module. And how you can import? Just write import, and this is the keyword to include a module, and then the name of the module. which is for example math in our case. And when you press enter, now you have included this module. Now how you can use the function inside this module, you can just you write the name of this module, which is math dot, and then you can use all the, you can see there are different options which you can use with this module called math. You can see here, right? So whenever you write dot, it will give you some options, you can see, and this options you can scroll it by um, up and down keys. Okay, so this math module has these much amount of built-in functions, right? You can scroll up or scroll down. And what function I want to use? I want to search for square root. So there is a square root here. Okay, so I can use square root. I have pressed enter. So this gives me some value. So once again, math dot sqrt, and then I can find the square root of any number. For example, I want to find the square root of 9. It will give me the answer 3. So in this way, there are some built-in module also, and these built-in module also have some built-in functions, and you can import these built-in module using a keyword import and the name of the module, and then you can use these modules like the name of the module and the function which it contains. Now, sometimes these modules are hard to spell or write. So what you can do, you can define your own variable for these module names. For example, I can declare a variable called uh, square root, which is equal to this math.sqrt. Okay, now whenever you use square root variable, you can perform the same functionality. For example, I want to find out the square root of 9, it will give me 3. So you can replace these built-in functions in module by your variable using this equal to sign. Okay, and now you have your own variable which can calculate the square root or any other function.
Hello guys, welcome to the fifth video tutorial on Python programming for beginners, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can save your program or how you can save your Python program to use this program in the future. So for example, you want to save your Python program and run it whenever you need in future. How you can do it, I'm going to show you in this video. So till now we were using this Python shell, and whatever code we write in this Python shell, it will execute this code very well, but it's not able to save your program. So whenever you just close this Python shell, your program is gone, it's not saved anywhere. So let's try to make a new file or new Python file so that we can use this Python file whenever we need, and we don't even need to worry about closing this shell. Okay, so how you can do this is you just need to open this Python shell. You already know that you can just open this Python shell by going to your Python folder and just open idle Python GUI from here, and this is that idle Python GUI, which is a Python shell. So just open it and just go to file here and just click new file, and this will open a new file, and you can save this file as a Python file. But first you need to write some code in here. So I'm just giving you an example how you can make this Python file and how you can run it. So for example, we want to calculate the maximum of 3 values. What you can do here is you can calculate the maximum of 3 values like this. So I have already shown you how you can take the input by using this input function, and how you can convert this input to an integer by just typecasting this string value which you get from the input to the integer and save it into a variable. So in the same way, I have three variable x, y, and z which are taking inputs from the user, and what I'm going to do is I'm just simply calculating the maximum value of these three numbers which user has entered, and I'm going to print this maximum. So maximum, I'm calculating this from a function called max, which I have shown you in the last video. It can take any number of argument. Right now I have only three argument because I want to compare three numbers and calculate the maximum value. So let's try to save this first. So you just need to save this program in order to run it. So you just need to go to file and just click save as, and in here choose your path for the Python file and just give the name of your Python file, for example test, and make sure that this here save as type is Python file here, which is .py file or .pyw file, and save your file. And now once your file is saved, you can just run it. Just go to this run tab and you can just click this run module or F5 key. Okay, so I'm going to run module, and this will run my module like this. So I'm going to give three numbers, for example 22, second number 33, third number 44, and it gives me the answer that maximum of these three values is 44, right? I can do this in a better way, that I can print something first, that the result is, or the max of three values is, and it depends upon you how you can run. This is just an example. Okay, so how do you want to make your program? You are free to make it, and this is just an example how you can save your file. But still it doesn't solve our purpose, because it's running our code in the shell, and we cannot always run our program, and we cannot open our Python shell everywhere. you know you want to run your Python file as an executable file, right? You don't need to open this Python shell every time you need to run your Python program. And how you can run your program directly is, you just need to go to the folder wherever you have saved your Python file. So I have saved my Python file here, but there is a little correction you need to make in this program. And what is the correction? Because it's taking three inputs, and it will take the three inputs and it's going to print this answer, and just after giving you the answer or printing the answer, it will instantly exit. So what you need to do, just need to give something so that it can stay. So just write input, and this is input, and in here you can just give a string that please press enter to exit, and this will keep your screen on, and until and unless you press enter, it will not exit. Just save your program once again. Just go to file and save it, and then go to the Python file wherever you have saved your Python file. Okay, just go to the Python file. You can right click and you can open. If you are going to open it, it will open it in the Python terminal, and this will run your program directly. You don't even need to use this Python shell. Or what you can do, you can just directly double click it and it will open your Python program, and it will give you the option,
please enter first number. I will enter first number 11, second number 33, third number 43, and when I press enter it will give me the answer, which is 43. The max of three values is 43, and now it will give me this option that press enter to exit, and when I press enter or any other key I will exit from my Python code. Okay, so once again you can save your Python file by going to this file tab and make a new file and just save your file. Once you have done writing your code, you just need to save your file as a py file. So you just need to go to file and save as, and you just need to give a name to your file and make sure that it's a Python file type. Okay, and once your file is ready, you just need to, or once your code is ready, you just need to save it. And once you have saved your file, you just need to go to the file and run it. If you have remembered, I have shown you in the first video that Python doesn't compile your program. Python directly runs your program. So you don't need to compile your program. It will run your program directly. Okay. And if any error occurs in your program, it will give you the answer at the runtime and not at the compile time. So this is why you can run your Python file directly like this by double clicking. Okay. Hello guys, welcome to the sixth video tutorial on Python programming for beginners. And in this video, I'm going to show you how you can use string in your Python program efficiently. So I think I have shown you in the earlier videos how to use strings very briefly, but in this video, I'm going to take this string in detail. So I have this Python file. I have shown you in the last videos that you can make Python files and run them using this run command, right? So I have this Python file and I have this Python shell open. So I'm going to write my code here and I will see the result in this shell. Okay. So how to use strings in Python? So there are three methods or three ways you can use strings, and I'm going to show you all three ways. So consider this example. We have three variables A, B and C, and all three of them I have assigned a string. One string which is assigned to variable A is enclosed in single quotes, right? The second string is enclosed in double quotes, right? And the third string, which is assigned to C, is enclosed in three or triple quotes. And I'm trying to print all three of them one by one. So I want to print A, print B and print C, and let's see what happens. So first of all, I'm going to save my program and then I will just run this module or press F5 to run it. And when I press this run, I will see the result here, and the result will be the same. So you can print the same string in three ways. Either you can use a single quote, or you can use double quotes, or you can use triple quotes to print the string, and the result will always be same in Python. Now suppose you want to use, for example, this is a string enclosed in single quote and you want to use some single quote here. So for example, I want to say uh, I'm a single quoted string, and for example I want to use a word called don't, which also take a single quote here, this kind of single quote. And when I use the single quote,
which with the string which is enclosed already in single quote, then what your Python program will interpret is your string starts from here and your string ends here, and this will be some alien to your Python, you know, Python program, because it will think that this single quote is start from here and ends here. So this is a string, and what is this? It's not recognized by the Python. So whenever you want to use a single quote in the string which is already there inside the single quote, you can use a escape character. And what is the escape character in Python? Escape character in Python is backslash. So just use this backslash, and now you can see that your backslash is hiding, or it's saying Python that we want to use single quote inside the string. Okay, and this is called escape character. So in the same way, when you want to use double quote in the string which is already there in the double quotes, for example here I want to use double quote, the same problem will come here. Your Python program will see that your string starts here and ends here, and this will not be recognized by your Python program. So here also you can use backslash to hide, or to say Python that we are using double quotes, but it's the part of the string and it's not starting or ending of the string. Okay, in a same manner you can use single quote here, and you can use this backslash to show this backslash or double quote here. Now I will save my program. I will just click Control S and run it once again, F5, and you can see the answer is like this. So I'm a single quoted string, and this single quote is visible now here. And just remember that this is just a escape character, so this will not be printed. This will help your single quote to print, but this will not be printed. In the same way, you can see it's printing this double quote here because we are using escape character, and in the same way it will work in the third string like this. Now suppose you want to print this this escape character. So you have some string which uses this, and you want to print here this backslash. How you can do it? You just need to use wherever you need to print this backslash. So for example, I will use backslash here, and let's see first of all what will be the result. For example, I want to print backslash here, here and here, and I will save my program and run it by pressing F, or this run Python module. It will show me this backslash here, right? But better way is to just use double slash. Let's see what happens when we use double slash. I will save it and run the program, and now it shows backslash like this. So it's always better to use double slash whenever you want to print this single backslash here. Okay, now suppose you want to print the length, or you want to find out the length of your string. What you can do, you can use a built-in function called len, and I think I have already shown this function to you, but once again I'm going to show you. So I want to find the length of the string a. I can just use len, and I will pass my variable a as an argument, and I can save it, and I can run it. I will run it here once again, and now it says 34. So length of my string A is 34. Okay, so in the same way you can find the length of B and C also, right? Now suppose I have a string A. For example, I have string A like this, hello, and space, and string B is like that, hello world. Okay, and how can I join these strings? I can join these strings just like you just need to use A and plus and B. So plus is called a concatenation operator here. And what this plus does, it just adds or concatenate these two strings A and B. So I will save the program and run it once again, and it gives me the answer hello world, right? So this plus concatenates your string. You can see here. Now, for example, I have this, I will just delete this, and I have this variable A, and I want to print it 10 times, and I don't want to use, A and then plus A, once again A. I want to print it 10 times, or suppose I want to print it 100 times. There is a short way to print this A 100 times or whatever number of times. What you need to do is you just need to use your variable which contains your string, and then give a asterisk symbol here. So give this asterisk symbol, and then the number of time you want to iterate. For example, I want to print hello 10 times. I can just give 10 here, and I can save the program and I can run it once again, and now you can see it has printed hello 10 times. This I can do, I can change it to 100 and it will print hello 100 times. Just run it. Now you can see it has printed this hello 100 times, right? This is a short way of printing your same string again and again. Okay, now suppose I have a string which is A. So I have this word, for example hello, which is assigned to A, and I have the other variable B, and I assign a number 2 to this, or 5 to this. Okay, and I want to print hello 5 in a single line. How can I do this? I can, for example, I can try to write it like this, A plus B, but let's see what happens when I run this. I will save it and I will run this, and it gives me the error because my variable A is of type string and my variable B is of type integer, and I cannot add or can concatenate these two variables because B has a different data type and A has a different data type. Now in order to print these two variables together, or value of these two variables together, what I can do is I can typecast my B, which is an integer, to the string. And to convert my integer to string, what I can do is I can just do str, and I can enclose this B variable in this function called str. And what this str does is it converts your argument into a string. Okay, and now when I save this and run this, it will run fine, hello 5, right? Hello guys, welcome to the 7th video tutorial on Python programming for beginners, and in this video I'm going to show you what are lists and how to use lists in Python. So as the name suggests, list is a collection of values, and how you can declare a list in Python, you just need to give the name of the list. For example, I want to have the list of names, So I can give the variable name for list as names is equal to and then the square bracket, and this square bracket will contain the collection of values, and it's totally valid that this collection can initialize as zero values. So the list can have zero values also, and it can have maximum values, for example tens or hundreds of values. So for example, I initialize this list like this, and this list is initialized as a blank list. Okay, and when I call this names list once again, it's an empty list because I haven't provided any value to the list. Okay, so it's totally valid that you initialize your list empty. Now to initialize list with some values, what you can do is you can just write name of the list once again, and then you can give the values inside your list like this. So for example, I want to have the collection of names, comma, some other name, comma, some other name, and this can go on and on and on, right? So it depends upon you what number of values you want to have in the list. And when I press enter, your name variable, which is a list, is initialized with these values. Now when you call this names variable once again, it has these three values. Now there is a term called index in Python for list, which indicates the position of the values in your list. So the position of this first name in the list, in as any other good language, starts from 0. It doesn't start from 1, but it starts from 0. And this is called the index of your list. So the index of this list, or the index of this name Mark is 0, index of this name John is 1, and index of this name Julie is 2. And on the basis of index, you can even call these values. So for example, I want to print out this first value called Mark. I can just write name of my list names and then just give the index. So the index 0 is for Mark, right? And when I press enter, it returns me the value Mark. In the same way, when I call index is equal to 2, names 2, it will give me Julie because it starts from 0, 1, 2, right? Now there is a very interesting thing in Python is that you can even have index backwards also, right? So the forward index starts from 0, 1, 2, and the backward index starts from -1, -2, -3, and if this has more values, -4, -5, and so on, right? Because why this starts from -1 and this forward index starts from 0? Because you cannot have -0 from backwards, right? So this index will be -1, this index will be -2, this index will be -3, and you can even call these values on the basis of backward index also. For example, I want to print this name Julie on the basis of backward index. I can just do it like this. I can just give the backward index, which is -1, which starts from -1, right? Backward index starts from -1, and this prints Julie once again. So always remember, if you want to start from, or you want to have the forward index, just start from 0, 1, 2, and if you want to have the values from the backward index, you start from -1, -2, -3, and so on. Okay, For example, you want to call name Mark, you just need to give names and the backward index -3 and you give Mark, right? Now, in order to add values, more values to your list, what you can do is you can just call the variable or your list name, and then you just write dot and just write append, and in this bracket you just pass the value which you want to add to your list. So I want to add one more value to my name list and I press enter. Now this name, which is a name of the list, dot append, which is a function, built-in function in Python, has appended or added one more values to my names list. And now when I print my names list, it has 4 values and it has added this extra name to my list. Okay. Now, for example, you want to add list into a list. So, for example, I have some other list called age, for example, ages or age, and I have some ages here, 23, comma 12, comma 32, comma, for example, 11. Okay. So I have a list of names and I have the list of age, right? And I assign this list, and now I want to add the age to my names list. How can I add? I can just write names, which is the name of my name list, right? Dot extend, and in the bracket you pass your second list. So you can just pass this like this and press enter, and it's totally valid. And now when you call this name list, you have extra list of age here. So there is an interesting fact about Python list is it can contain different data types. So it's not necessary that your list only if you initialize list by string values, it only has to contain string values. Your list can contain string values also, or the integer values or float values or any other data type values, and it's totally fine in Python. Okay, so you can define different data type list also. Okay, so just remember this. Now you must have or you could have done the same thing. For example, you want to add or first of all I will show you how you can remove items from a list. Okay, so to remove an item from a list, what you need to do is, for example, my list name is names. I want to remove some items, so I will just write names dot remove, and in the bracket I will just give the item value. For example, I want to remove this name Patrick from the list. Okay, so I will just say name, which is the name of my list, dot remove, and then the value which you want to remove, and press enter. And once again I will call names, and now the value Patrick is gone from the list, right? So in this way you can remove list from your not remove list but remove values from your list in Python. Now, for example, you want to print a list, you can just call print method. So it's you can call your list using this print method also. So you can just write names and press enter, and it will give print the list of name like this only. Okay, now in order to print multiple lists, For example, I have the list called names, and I have initialized this list called ages also, right? So I can just separate my list by comma, and I will just add one more list, and it will print two lists for me. First list is for names till here, and second list of ages till here, right? So you can either you use single list or multiple list, or print them like this. Okay, now in order to get I have shown you how you can get the maximum value, minimum value, or the length of the strings in the last video, right? On the list also you can call length method, len, and you can find the length of the list, like you just call len built-in function and just pass the list name as an argument, right? And it will give the length of the string, which is 7, right? 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, right? So if the list contains 7 values, it will return 7. This is the length of the list. Okay, now you can even print, for example, max. If uh, it applies to your list, you can even call this method. It will give an error because my list is a mixed list, right? But the same method, max, when I apply it to the list called age, it will give me the answer 32, right? Because my list of age only contains the integer values, and the maximum values of this is 32. Okay, so you can also apply built-in function on list also. Hello guys, welcome to the 8th video tutorial on Python programming for beginners, and in this video I'm going to show you how to use slicing in Python. So as the name suggests, slicing, we can use it for separating a slice from a list. So for example, I have a list like this, and I will call it my list, and it contains some integer values from 0 to 9, and I press enter and it allocates this 0 to 9 values to my list, and I can just see this by printing the list. So it has 0 to 9 values. Now suppose I want to print only, or I want only the values from 4 to 7. How can I get these values from my list? So what I can do is I can just use my list, and then in the square bracket I will start from the value which I want to print. So for example 4, and then I give this colon, and then I give the ending value till whatever value I want to print, for example 8, and I press enter and it prints from 4 to just before the value you want to print. So if you remember, this index of the list starts from 0, right? So index is 0 here, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, right? So to print your values, this starting value, whenever you write, it includes the index of the value you want to print. Okay, so when you write 4, it will include 0 1 2 3 4, so it will print the value from 4 and it will go to 8, 4 5 6 7 8, but it excludes this value and it only prints up to 7. Okay, now suppose you want to print something like you want to print to the end from 5 to 9. How you can do it? You can just do it like my list, and you can just write 5, and because this will print, if you write it here 9, this will print up to 8, right? Because whenever we have written 8 here, it was printing up to 7 value, right? And remember, this is the index, not the values. These values can be string, data type, or any other data type, right? So these value has nothing to do with these index values. Okay, these are the position which you want to print. Okay, so in order to print from 5 to 9, you need to add one more to your slice, and then it will print from 5 to 9. Okay, so remember, if you want to go from some value in the middle to the end, just add 1 to the index here. Okay, so you want to print 9, then just print 10 here. Now as I have already told you that you not only can have the list, or you can not only can uh, print the index, slice the index for the integer array or list, but any string list also. So for example, I have a list like this of character, for example, characters, and then I want to print or slice these list characters, right? So how you can do it? I will just write name, my list names, and then in the square bracket I will just write 2 to 3. For example, I want to print 2 to 3. It will just print second value because it skips the third value, right? So 0, 1, 2, it includes the 2, and it skips the value which you give here. So it will only print 2 C here, right? For example, I want to go to the end. I will just write 2 to 4. And it gives list like this. Now, for example, there is a short way of doing this. If you want to print from 5 to the end, what you can do, I have this my list here. I will copy and paste it here, and in the square bracket what you can do, you can just write 5 and semicolon and leave the other part of this slice, and when you press enter it will just print the values from 5 to 9 to the end of your list. Okay, now for example, you do the same thing, but you leave the first part and just go up to the last part. It will print from start to the end. Okay, so for example, I want to print once again colon or to the fifth value, and it will print from the starting to the fifth value. Okay, now this will be true for the negative sequence also. So I have already told you in the last video that you can in the list you can have the index, negative index, from the backward or from the back, right? So what you can do is you can just use this list and you can just say minus 4 to minus 2 and press enter. It will give you the values from, so this is minus 1, minus 2, and it will skip this value and it will print here, and then we have minus 1, minus 2, minus 3, minus 4, and minus 4 is this one, right? So it will print this one, it will print this one, but it will not print this one because it will skip this, right? As we have seen in this positive or forward indexing. In a similar way, it will this also works for the blank sequence. For example, minus 6 to blank, and it will print from 4 to 9. Okay, and it will be same for if you leave the first part and want to print the last part. Okay. Now if you want to print the whole array, you just can do it like this, but you can also do it like just give a square and give this semicolon here. It will also give you the whole array. Okay. Now there is one more thing you can do with your list is, for example, I have my list and I want to print the values. For example, I want to print 0, 3, 6 in some sequence. Okay, so you want to skip some values and you want to print only some other values. So what you can do here, you can just write 0, which is a starting index, and to 10, so you want to print from 0 to the end, and there is a optional value you can give here, and you can give the value here which you want to skip. So for example, you want to skip 0, 1, 2, 3 here, so you want to print 0, 3 and 6 and 9. What you can do here, you can skip the value by 2. Okay, and when you print here, it will print 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, so it prints here and it skips the first value and second value it prints, it skips the third value and fourth value it prints, and it just like this, right? So for example, I can once again skip two values at a time. Instead of 2, I can write 3 here and press enter. I will give 0, 3, 6, 9. Okay, and there is a very short way of doing this is you can just write the skip value, number of index you want to skip, and just leave these things or these parts blank here, and it will print the same value. Okay, so this is optional. It's not necessary to use this, but if you use this, it will skip those values like this. Okay, and you can do it with the negative index also. For example, you can just leave this and write 2 here. It will print from the backward to the front, right? So when you write -2, it will start from 9 and then -2, it will print 7 and then 5 and 3 and 1. Okay, so if you want to print backward, just give this sequence in negative. Okay, once again, you want to print backward, skipping third value or 3 values, just do it like this: 9, 6, 3, 0. Okay, so in this way you can use sequence in Python. There is more to sequence which I will discuss in later videos. Hello guys, welcome once again. Till now I have been showing you basic but very important concepts of Python. Now from this video we are going to write some code in our Python file, and from this video we are going to write some useful code. And this video I will start from showing you how conditional statement works, and in this video I'm going to specifically take if statement in Python. So let's get started. I have this test.python file which I made. If you don't know how to make this test.python file, you just need to go to file in the shell and just click new file, and then just save your file at your specified location by some name. Okay, and you will be having this type of file. So my Python file name is test.py. Now the conditional statement which I'm going to take, let's see how if statement works. So for example, I want to find out the absolute value of a number. How can I find out? By using a if statement. So for example, I write a variable which takes an input. So I ask the user to enter an input and I convert it to an integer and will be saved in the variable called n. Okay. Now I want to find out the absolute value of that number. So what I can do is I can use if statement. And how you can declare if statement, just write if and then the condition. Okay, so here comes the condition. This is a pseudo code I'm writing. So we are going to replace this condition by a real condition. And then in here, so always remember when you write code in Python, it's indentation is really necessary. So if you write any condition, for example, if you give another code, for example, I want to print something, what it will do is this statement sees the indentation. And let me give you an example first, and then I will illustrate the basic concept of indentation. So I want to find out the absolute number, right? So in the condition I can write n if n is less than 0. So this is a condition I'm checking. If user enters the value n which is less than 0, what I'm going to do is I'm going to print the value, absolute value. So I'm going to just write the absolute value of, and then I can just use comma to give the value of n, and once again I can use comma to separate this string, and I can write is, and let me make a little bit bigger, is, and then I can just separate it by one other comma, and I can just write minus n if the value is less than 0, right? So let's save this program. Just control S to save the program, and I will run the program, run module or F5, and it says invalid syntax. And why it says invalid syntax here is because in here after if condition you need to give colon here. Okay, so this is taken as a condition, and after colon it indicates that this condition ends here, and then the statement starts from here. Once again, save it and run it, and then it will run in this shell, and it's asking the user to enter a number. I will enter a negative number, -3, and press enter, and it gives me the absolute value of -3, which is 3. Okay, now for example, I enter a positive number. What happens then? Okay, so I will run it once again, and this time I enter +10, and now nothing happens because this condition we are checking is less than, or we are checking for the number less than 0. So this will print this. And just remember always that always provide an indentation here. Okay, if you don't provide this small space or tab here, and just write your code here with no space here, and save your program and run it, let's see what happens. So it says expected an indented block, right? So always provide an indentation, and it's show you the place where the error is coming in red, red highlight. Okay, so always provide, just give a tab before your statement after if condition, okay, or after any any logic which you write. So now this is considered as a statement. Okay, and if you write this if statement or like this, it will consider this line as a different code and it will not come as a statement of if condition. Okay, now for example I provide the positive number and I also want to give the absolute value of this positive number. So what I can do is I can just give else condition, else. So your statements start from, with no space here. But so if your condition is if, and then we have the else condition. So your condition starts from no space, but the statement inside your condition starts with the indentation or space here. Just give a tab and it will give you this space. Okay, so once again I want to print out the absolute value of a number. Now I want to check whether a number is positive. So if the number is not negative, which is this condition, if number is less than 0, which means number is negative, this will be printed. Else, if the number is positive, because this condition is not true, that means definitely the number is positive, I want to print out the absolute value of this positive number, right? So I will just print it like this. Absolute value of this should be value. N is positive because the absolute value of positive number is positive, right? So now when I save the program and run it, and it says invalid syntax once again. Why? Because I also need to give this colon here, right? Now once again save it and run your program, and it gives me this question mark with a number. I give 10 once again, and it says absolute value of 10 is 10. So this is the basic syntax of if statement. Your you give if as a keyword for checking the comparison or comparison, and you compare some values. So right now we are comparing our value which user enters from 0, and if it's less than 0 we print this, else anything else will be covered by this statement. And always remember that your if statement or else statement will have no space here, but your actual code which you write in if statement or else statement will have to have this kind of indentation here. Indentation means space or tab. Okay, and it's not necessary that you can only give one line of code inside your if condition. You can just give multiple lines of code inside your if condition. I will just make it little bit prettier. So it can have, multiple line of statements, your if condition or your else condition. This is just an example I'm giving, but this will be some logical code which you have to write here. And in a similar way, you can just give this here, right here, right? So you can have multiple statement in else condition. Now one more thing to remember here is whenever you want to go outside, so now you want to do some other operation. For example, I want to add two numbers n, or I will declare a variable called sum of two. For example, this is my variable name, and I add 50 plus 60. Okay, and I want to print it. Print, and then I want just print this sum of these two numbers, right? So if I do it like this, for example, I do it like this, what will happen? Let's see. I save it and run my program, and I give a negative number -9 for example, and it gives me these values, which it execute these values. Okay, but I wanted to print this number also after the my if else condition. So how I can show, or how I can tell Python that my else condition is now closed, or my this if else condition is now over, and I want to print this now. So your next code should start from, once again, with no space. Okay, so this will be considered as a different code, and it will not be included in these uh, conditional statements, right? And now when I save it, I will save it, and then I give -8 for example. Yeah, I need to give -8, and now you see it gives me the absolute value, which execute this code, and then it execute my another code, this code, which I want to execute after my if condition. Okay, so just if you want to end your else statement and you want to write some other code, just start from no space. So indentation is really very important in Python. If you write or give this indentation incorrectly, your Python code will give any error, or some error. Okay, so this is the if else condition in Python. Hello guys, welcome once again. In the last video I have shown you how to use if else statements in Python. So I have given you a little brief introduction how to use if else statement, but there is more to if else statement, which is elif statement and nested if else statement. So let's see how we can use those two. So for example, I'm going to just take a new example. So I'm going to delete all these stuff, and for example, I want to compare some names. This time I want to have a variable called name, and I want to take input from a user that he will give me a name, and then I will compare the name and I'm going to show the result. Okay, so what I can do is I want to compare the name, right? So in my if condition, I will compare my name, if my name, and to compare equality you use double equal, not this but double equal sign here. Okay, so always remember, if you want to compare the equality of two string or two values, you just use not single equal to, but you use double equal to. If you use single equal to, this means assignment. So assign, so this single equal to means that assign the value whatever user enters to the name. But if you use double equal to, it means that you want to compare the two values. Okay, so I want to compare this value to, for example, name called Mark, and I can say print the name entered is the name entered is, and then comma name, for example. Okay, now I want to check some more names if the user enters some other names, right? So for example, if user enters some other name, I want to check it. So how I can check it? Just I can check it by else if condition. Okay, so there is a condition called else if. This else if means else if. Okay, and then I can check one more condition. For example, this name is this time John, and then I will print some other value of, so I will just print the name of John here. so the name entered is John. In a similar way, I can have multiple if else conditions like this, and just don't remember to give the indentation, and then for example some other name I can compare, or some other name I can compare. Okay, so if you want to compare different conditions, you can use elif condition, and else if the condition is false, what I can do, I can just print that the name entered is not valid, for example, not valid. Okay, and now I've saved the program, and when I run this, it asks me to enter a name. Also, for example, I enter a name Mark, it says the name entered is Mark. Okay, once again when I run the program once again, and this time I entered some other name, for example Tom, and press enter, it says name entered is Tom because it goes here. So what's the flow of the program? So we are checking, or we are asking the user to enter any name. So when the user enters any name, this name goes in this name variable, and then the program comes to this place to compare this name to the name called Mark. And if the name is Mark, it will print this. Okay, otherwise it will go on to check that if the name is John, and if the name is John, it goes here and it print this. Otherwise it will check if the name is Julie and it will print this. Okay, so in this way your if else statement works, or else if, or if else, else if, else if, else if, else. So elif means else if, and you can compare multiple condition using elif, right? Now for example, I want to have multiple if condition inside my if condition. Okay, so it's called nested if condition. Okay, and I tell the user to enter any name, and if this name is let's say name, we assign this value, this name, to, for example, we have this name is equal to animal, animal, and then this I declare another variable, uh, animal name, for example, animal name, and this animal name is dog. Okay, so I have a name which is animal, and then I have animal name is equal to dog. So first of all I want to compare if the name is animal. Okay, so if the name is animal, then I want to do some other, or I want to check some other condition in this animal condition. So I can just give one more condition to check if this animal name is equal to, so is equal to dog. Okay, dog, and don't forget this colon, and then I will print here. So if your if statement starts from here, in the last video I've shown you that you need to give the um, indentation here. Okay, if you write, so let me show you, print, you can just print valid animal, valid animal. Okay, so why this indentation here is more important is because, for example, I can just write print like this without, I only give this indentation. So I can say name entered is animal. Okay, so see the indentation here. Here indentation, so this statement belongs to this if condition, and this print statement belongs to this condition because this comes in the line of this if statement, right? So whatever you write here in the line of this, it will be the condition of or valid condition of this, and it will print this one. And if animal name is dog, it will go here and it will print valid animal. So what do you think what happens? Let's see what happens. I will just run my program, save it, and it says valid animal name entered is animal, right? So uh, and just remember that whenever you want to give the statement or code for this if condition, just uh, make sure that this is in line with this if, and whenever you want to give the code for this if condition, you just give your statement in this or along this line. Okay, so indentation, just remember indentation. And this is called the nested if else condition. So what we have done, we have checked if this name is equal to animal, and if name is equal to animal, then we say that we compare one more condition, that if animal name is dog, and then we print this. Or in the case of name this animal name is not dog, we can just say else, and I can just print one more condition, print animal name. I can just uh, print animal name in valid. Okay, so this is my if else condition inside my another if condition. So this is like a parent if, and this is like a child if else condition. Okay, so I just change this name, some other name, cat for example, and I save it and I run it, and invalid expression because here I forgot the colon. Save, run it once again, and now it will print animal name is invalid because it goes here and it sees okay, name is equal to animal, so I go to this condition, but animal name is not dog here, it's cat, so it goes in this condition and it says animal name is invalid, and then it just print the name entered is animal. Okay, so in this way you can use else if and nested else if statement in Python. Hello guys, welcome once again. In this video I'm going to show you how to use comparison operators and logical operators in Python. In the last few videos I have been showing you how to use if else statement in Python, and this is the continuation, you may say, but uh, these comparison operators and logical operators you can not only use with these if else statements, but in general also you can use them. So first of all, comparison operators. Comparison operators, as the name suggests, we use for comparing values. Now there are these comparison operators which are available in Python, which are less than, and which is indicated by this symbol. Second is less than or equal to, which are indicated by less than sign and equal to, and greater than, greater than equal to, double equal to indicates that you want to check the equality, and this exclamation mark equal to means that you want to check the non-equality. Okay, now there are some logical operator operators by which you can perform some logical operations between some values. For example, you want to check, you have two variables and you want to check, or two conditions, and you want to check both the condition, and you want that both the conditions has to be true. You use and condition, and using and condition, it means that you are checking for all the conditions. In this case, we are checking this condition has to be true and this condition has to be true, otherwise it will say false. uh, in the opposite, or the opposite of and is or, not exactly opposite but the logically opposite of and is or. And or means either one condition is true, then it will give you true. So let's see how we can use it. So first of all, for example, you want to check the less than condition. I can just copy this, and in my shell I can run it, and I can print. I want to print if this is true, print true. Okay, and I will press enter 2 times, and this true has to be enclosed in double quotes, right? Press enter and it says true because 9 is less than 10, right? In a similar way, I can check these functionality, but this time I'm not going to use if condition, but yeah, you can use all these operators with if conditions. Okay, so for checking less than or equal to, we can just write directly right in the shell and press enter and it gives true. Okay, so this means less than or equal to. So 9 is less than 10. So this condition is true. So that's why it's giving true to us. And always remember that you have to use less than first and followed by this equal to. Let's see what happens when you say 9 equal to less than 10. And it gives syntax error. So always use less than first and then equal to sign in order to avoid any problems. In a similar way, you can just check the greater than. So if 9 is greater than 10, which is false, so it will give us false, right? 9 is greater than equal to 10, which is also false. And now we are checking the equality, which I have shown you in the last video, which is false. 9 is not equal to 10. And let's check if 9 is not equal to 10. This exclamation mark and equal to checks for the non-equality. So it will be true, yes. And if 9 is less than, we have already checked it. Okay. Now we have AND condition, right? So for example, I want to check whether 9 is less than 10 and 9 is not equal to 10. So I want to check whether these two conditions are true at the same time. Okay, and I press enter and it gives me true. And let's let's check for some other condition. So this condition is true in this case, which is 9 is less than 10, and this is also true because 9 is not equal to 10, so it gives true. For example, I delete this not equal to and write equal to here. So one condition is false here, which is 9 is not equal to 10, because we are checking for two conditions to be true at the same time. It will give me false because this condition is true, but this is false, right? So whenever you use AND operator, your program expects that both the conditions or whatever conditions you are giving are true. So you can even give three conditions. For example, I want to check the non-equality, and so it's not necessary that you only give two conditions. You can even give 3, 4, 5 or whatever conditions. Okay. and it's totally fine. Okay. In a similar way, you can use OR to check whether either of the condition is true. If this condition is true or this condition is true. In this case, both the conditions are true, so it gives true. But when we give this statement where one condition is true, which is 9 is less than 10, which is true, but 9 equal to or equal to 10, which is not true, it will still give you uh, I have I must have used OR here, right? Because we are checking for OR. So it gives us true, right? So in this way you can use comparison operators and logical operators. There is some more things you can check and these are is and in conditions or is and in operators, whatever you want to say. So for example, I want to check I have a string equal to what we can say a b c d e. Okay, so our string equal to a b c d e, and I want to check if uh, a is present in string or not. So a in string, and it gives us true. So what this in operator does is it checks whether this variable contains this value or character or not in such way, right? So in a similar way you can search for B or C or any conditions. Okay, so for example you want to check whether A B is present, it gives us true, but whenever you give A C it will give you false because A and C are not together present here. Now suppose you have two lists. One list is called A is equal to uh, 1 comma 2 comma 3 and B equal to same list. Okay, uh, B, and there is operator called is. So whenever we use A is B, it will give you false. But for example you declared a, a list C equal to D equal to 1 2 3, will give you true because it checks whether these two or two values are exactly equal or not. These A and B are equal by values, but they are not logically equal. That's why it will give you false. But this we have already assigned or assigned C equal to D, or we have assigned D to C equals this value. That's why it will give us true. So let's check C is D and it will give us true. Okay, so in this way you can use logical operators, comparison operators, and is in operator in Python. Hello guys, welcome once again. In this video I'm going to show you how to use loops in Python, and I'm going to show you how you can use a while loop and for loop in Python. So these are two kinds of loop in Python you can use to iterate some values. So first of all, let's see what is a loop. A loop is a piece of code which help you to iterate or to repeat a piece of code again and again without rewriting the same piece of code again and again. So loop, as the name suggests, is a piece of code which will help you to write or implement some piece of code again and again unless and until some condition is true. So let's see how a while loop work in Python first. So for example, I have a variable called a which is equal to 0. And so let's see how while loop declaration works. So for declaring a while loop, you just need to write while, and then the condition comes which needs to be true if you want to go out of the loop. So for example, I want that if a is less than 5, then I want to implement this. Okay. So once again, I forgot the colon here. My loop has this colon. Okay. So I want that if a is less than 5, I want to loop the value of a. Okay. So I want to print a. Okay. And because this condition is never be true if I don't increment the value of a, so I'm going to increment the value of a like this. So a plus equal to 1. This is same as writing for example a is equal to a plus 1. This is same as this one, but you can write this in short like this, right? And I will just execute this while loop, and the result is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so you haven't printed this 0 to 4 integers. You just have written this one line of code to print all these numbers. So while loop or loop help you to implement a piece of code or again and again, right? So what happens here? We have already declared a is equal to 0, and then your code goes here and it sees it's a while loop and it checks this condition a is less than 5, because a is 0 and 0 is less than 5, so it will print this 0 value here. Once again it goes to a while loop once again, and because I was increasing it by 1, now value of a becomes 1. So a is 1, which is less than 5, so it will print 1 here with this code, and it will increment a once again, and now a is 2 and 2 is less than 5, so once again it will print 2, and same is for 3. But as soon as 5 comes here and 5 is not less than 5, then it will not print 5, because this condition is false now, so it will go out of the loop. So this in this way this while loop works. Now let's see some real life example, or some practical example of while loop. So for example, I have this example where I have a is equal to 0 and s is equal to or a is equal to 1 and s is equal to 0, and I'm telling the user to enter some value. Okay, so enter number to add to the sum. Okay, and enter 0 to quit. Okay, so I'm telling user to enter some value so that I can make the sum, or otherwise if you want to quit, just enter 0. And then I'm checking whether a is equal to 0. If a is not equal to 0, then I'm going to take this value of s, and then I'm asking the user to enter a number, and then I will add this number to my sum. S stands for sum and a stands for a number, and then I will print the sum like this. Okay, so this is a little example which is more practical in real life situations, and I will run this, and now it will run. So I'm asking enter the number to add to the sum. If you enter 0, you will be quit, or you will quit the program, and current sum is 0. So for example, I enter 300. Okay, and now current sum becomes 300. Okay, and for example I enter minus 2 or 340, then current sum becomes 40. Okay, so it will go on keeping the sum or making the sum plus 80, so it will add to this 80 once again, and then for example 120, it will add 120 to the sum. So this code will help us to make a sum of numbers which user will enter. But as soon as I enter 0, you see here, then the while loop is no more valid because this condition becomes false, and then user will exit. So when I press 0, the sum is 160, which is true, and while loop is ended and condition is false, and I'm out of the loop. Okay, so in this way you can use while loops. Now there is one more kind of loop in Python which are called for loop. And for example, I have a list called b is equal to, in the list I have 2 comma 4 5 some numbers. Okay, so I'm just taking some random numbers here, and for example I want to print all these numbers in the list but one by one. Okay, so what I can do, I can use a for loop. And for loop, how I can declare? With just this for, and then I will declare a variable which will hold the value of these elements one by one. Okay, so for example I new m, this is defined by me. Okay, and what this does is this will hold the value of elements in the list one by one, and then write in. This in operator I have shown you how it works in the last video if you don't know, and then just write b, which is our list which contains these values. Okay, and then what I'm going to do, once again I forgot this colon. I somehow I keep on forgetting this colon, and then I will print num, because this num holds the value, well, holds the list value one by one. Okay, and I will just execute it, and you see my print function prints the values in the list one by one by one, right? So in this way you can use for loop and while loop, and both of the loop you can use interchangeably. So it's both loop works in the same way, but the while loop, the difference is in between while loop and for loop is, when you are using while loop, it it waits for the condition to be true, and it will keep on executing your code while your condition is true, right? And if condition is false, it will go out of the loop. And for loop, there is no condition. It will just list out the values you give here. Okay, hello guys, welcome once again. In this video I'm going to show you what is a function, how to use a function, and why we use function in Python. So first of all, what is a function? So let's see what is a definition of function. A function is a group of statements that together performs a specific task. So basically, we write a function to do a particular task again and again without rewriting the same code again and again. And functions make your code readable and maintainable. Maintainable means if you want to change something in your code, by writing functions, it's easy to maintain your code. Okay, so always remember, whenever you want to write a specific logic or code again and again or more than once, use a function instead. Okay, so let's see how we can define a function. So in Python, you can define a function like this. You need to use a keyword which is def, and then you give a space and give a function name, and then in the brackets you give something called arguments. Okay, so whatever you give in the brackets, these are called arguments, and there is no limits to arguments. You can define any number of argument which you want to pass to a function, and then a semicolon, and then comes the statements are the piece of code which you write inside a function. Now suppose I want to make a function to print hello to some name. So either I can do print, as we have been seeing, that I can use print and I can say hello and the name. For example, I want to say hello Mark, right? So, and I can print it. But for example, I have 25 names or 100 names which I want to say hello, and don't want to rewrite this print again and again. By the way, this print is also a function, and we are passing the string as an argument to this print. But print is a built-in function, which I have shown you in the previous video what are built-in function and how to use built-in function. Now let's make our function, and what function we define are called user defined function. So we will define a function, for example, we will call our function def, and then name of our function will be hello, for example. Okay, and what we are going to do, we are going to pass a variable. So you can name your variable, or any name, you can give any name to your variable. For example, name, or X or Y, or whatever you want to give an argument. You can name your argument uh, depending upon your wish. So I will name my argument as name because it's more logical, because I want to print name, right? And then I give this colon. Okay, now after this colon, inside the function we write statement. So what we want to do, we want to print hello and the name whatever we pass in a function, right? So we will say hello and print, and then we pass this argument. Whatever argument you will pass, we will pass this argument to the print function, and then what we want, that we want to print hello and whatever name we will pass. Okay, now I will just run this function, or how we can use this function. So function is defined now. Okay, now how we can use this function, we can just call this function hello, and then we can pass a name which is a string, right? So we want to pass a function which takes a string. Okay, so for example, I say Mark. Okay, and I press enter, and it says hello Mark. Okay, and once again I can just once again called hello, and this time I pass a different name, for example John, and it says hello John. And in a similar way, you can pass any name, it will print other names also. So what this function has done for us, it makes our code really readable, because we are not rewriting this piece of code which is print For example, suppose you want to perform, you know, 10 or 20 line of code in one go, and these 20 line of code perform a particular logic, and you don't want to, you know, rewrite these 20 line of code again and again. So you can use a function instead to enclose these 20 line of code, and then you can use this function so that you don't have to write these 20 line of code again and again. You can just call a function by its name. If it takes an argument, you can pass the argument, and then it will give you the result, right? Now, it's not necessary that you always has to pass any argument. You can define a function without any argument also, right? So always remember, a function can have zero argument or any number of arguments. Minimum is zero or no argument, and maximum is depending upon you. Okay. Now, uh, there is a and one more thing I want to say here is function don't take only strings, they can take numbers. So let's make a little bit useful function to add two numbers. So I will just define a function by def, and I will name my function as add function. Okay, and this will take two arguments, for example x and y. So I will just separate my arguments by a comma, and then I will give this colon here, and then I want to print the result. Okay, so what I can say is I can return, and return means giving the answer. Okay, simply giving the answer. And what I want to return, I want to return the addition of x plus y. Okay, and now I will press enter two times. That means my function is defined. Now I can use this function to add two values. So I will call this function add, and I want to add, for example, 100 and 500. Okay, and what this will do, it will add 100 and 500, and it will return the answer. So if when it returns the answer, you can save your answer in some other variables. For example, I can define a variable called sum, and I can save this sum in this variable. Okay, so for example, I define a variable called sum1 is equal to add 100 comma 500, and I can press enter. Now my sum is in my sum1 variable, so I can print my sum1 like this, sum1, and it gives 600. So what this function has done for us, add function, it has taken x and y. So x is assigned, or 100 is assigned to x, and 500 is assigned to y, and then it adds the value of x and y, which is 100 plus 500, and it gives the result, return the result. And when a function return any result, you can save it into another variable. Okay, so it has saved this result into the sum variable, and it returns. And same thing you can do again and again. So for example, you want to add some other numbers, for example 234 and 333. You can do it like this, and you can call sum2, and will give you the result. Okay, hello guys, in the last video I have shown you how to use and how to define a function in Python. In this video also I'm going to continue with functions, and I'm going to show you how to use some other features in functions like default parameter and multiple parameters in function. So let's get started. In the last video I've shown you how you can declare a function. So you can declare a function in Python like this. Def, for example, I want to make a function to print out the score of a student. So I can say student uh, score, for example. This is name of my function, and in this uh, brackets I can pass parameters, right? For example, name and score. Okay, and then this colon, and inside this function we can write the definition or the code to our function. For example, I want to print something, print the student name and score. I can just write the or something like name scored this much amount of marks. So I can just write name and then comma and then scored and then comma. This should be scored, right? Not scare, comma, marks, right? And this is simple. You have already understood, I think, the concept of defining the function and how to print these values, right? And if I call this function, it will just give me the answer. For example, I pass name as Mark and score as 70%, and it says Mark scored this much amount of marks, right? But sometimes you want that there are some default value which are already initializing these parameters. For example, in the case of databases, it's a bad idea to save blank values or null values in the database. So, and you cannot depend upon the user that he can define, or you cannot be sure that user will define a parameter for every function. So what you can do in Python is you can define default parameter. So once again, I'm going to take this function, but I will initialize this function with some value so that it will not be null at any point. For example, Tom as name and score is equal to 0, for example, right? Now I can just print the score and name, and the default value will remain just the same, right? And my function is defined, and now when I use this function, and even if I don't pass any parameter, generally you have to pass the parameter when you define a function, and when you define a function with parameters. But when you initialize a function with default value, you even skip passing the values to your parameter. And once I call this function, it says Tom scored 0 marks, because Tom is a default value and score of Tom is 0. Okay, so Tom is a default name and 0 is the default mark. And so you can ask, what is the purpose of this? The purpose of this is, if the user will not pass any value as an argument, then default value will be taken. Otherwise, if the user enters some valid name, for example Mark and 85 marks, and once again you can see it's printing marks scored 85 marks. Okay, so it has overwritten this Tom as Mark, the name it has overwritten as Mark, and the score is overwritten by 85, right? Now you can choose to pass the first parameter and skip the second parameter. For example, you can just pass Mark here, and it says Mark scored 0 marks, because this it has taken as the first parameter and it has overwritten the name, but we haven't passed our score, so it will take the score as default, which is 0, so it will print like this. Now for example, you want to pass this score
and you want the name to be default, what you can do, once again, take the function and this time just write score is equal to 99, for example, and it says Tom scored 99 marks, right? So Tom is the default value here and 99 is overwritten, uh, or 0 is overwritten by 99 which you passed. Okay, so this is about default parameter passing. Now there is a concept of passing multiple parameters to a function, and how you can pass these multiple parameter. For example, I will take the same example of student, and you want to pass some parameters. So I want to pass name of the student, and I want to pass multiple score of the student. For example, student has scored marks in language, marks in programming, marks in maths, or marks in some other subject, and you want to pass the parameters, but you don't know the number of subject student is taking. So what you can do in this condition, you can just use the name as it is, but for example you want to pass multiple scores, you can just use asterisk, and this asterisk says Python that this parameter will be passed one parameter also, or multiple parameters also, so one or more parameter. So our asterisk says to the Python that this score can be multiple also, or even it can be one also. Okay, and it's saying invalid syntax. Let's see what's the error. Yeah, I have forgotten the def keyword to define a function. So I will define a function def, and then I will call this, and once again I can print for example I will print first of all name, print name, and then I will print score. Okay, and I will just call this function, for example student, and I will pass name as once again mark, and scores, for example he has taken language course, so he scored 55 marks in this language course. He has taken maths course, he has scored 77 marks. He has taken programming course, he scored 90 marks. He has taken other courses, physics, 67 marks, or multiple courses. Okay, so this is a wildcard kind of entry which says you can pass one or more parameters, right? And you see it has printed first of all the name of the student, which is Mark, and then these marks as a tuple. If you don't know what is a tuple is just like a list, but you cannot edit a list, or you cannot even delete an element from a list. You can just read this element from a tuple, right? So tuple is just like a list, but the only difference is you cannot modify or delete any elements from this tuple. So this is tuple, right? So in this way you can even pass multiple values using this asterisk, and it's not necessary that you need to pass only two parameters. You can just pass one parameter, for example def score, something like this, asterisk score. It will be valid. I forgot this called colon, like this. And what's the problem here? So okay, I left some indent here which it's saying unexpected indentation. Okay, and you want to print score. That will be totally valid when you call this function score, and you can pass multiple values, 1 comma 3, some marks, multiple marks, right? And it will give you a tuple. So in this way you can pass default parameters to a function, and you can pass multiple parameters to a function in Python. Hello guys, in this video we are going to learn about creating classes and using classes in Python. Now we all know that Python is an object-oriented programming language, and in object-oriented programming language, a class is an extensible program code template for creating object, providing initial values of states and implementations of behavior. Now, this definition of class, you may think that, what is this? So let me give you an example. Suppose you want to create a class, or you want to save some data for a person. Now person has some attribute, for example, first name, last name, and for example, you want to print the person's name. So a class can also have member functions or member methods, right? So we are going to take this example of person, and we are going to create a person class, and we are going to give the attribute to this class as first name and last name, and we will try to print the person's name. Okay, so let's see how we can create a class in Python. Now in Python, the class is created by using the word class itself, and then you give the name to the class. In our case, we want to give the name to the class is person, so we will give this person name to the class, and then this colon comes, and inside this class you can define member functions or member variables. Now how you can define member functions in a class? You just need to give, for example, I want to print the name, first name and last name of the person. I can create a method to print this. So I can create a function like this: print full name, for example. This is the function name, but we all know that function, whenever we want to define a function, we use def in front of a function, right? And then we can pass some argument here. Now whenever we use a function inside a class, the first argument we give to the member function is a keyword called self, and this self is nothing but a pointer, or this self points to the class itself. Okay, so this class, whenever we create an instance of a class, which I'm going to show you how you can create an instance or object of a class, this self point to the object of the class. So just wait for a while and you will understand. And then you pass the name of the argument. So for example, first name and last name. Okay, then colon, and then you can give the definition to the class.
So for example, I want to set the value of first name and last name. So what I can do is I can use the same keyword self to call the first name variable and last name variable of the class. This should be last, right? And then we use a dot separator to call them. So for example, we want to set the first name, we just use self, and first name is equal to first name. And then in a similar way, we can just define the second variable, or setting the second variable, which is last name. So self dot last name is equal to last name. Okay, it's better to rename this function as set full name. Okay, so what this function is doing, it's setting the first name and last name to the variables in a class, or member variables in a class, which are first name and last name. So whatever argument you pass here, first name and last name, will be passed to the member variable of the class, which are also first name and last name. Okay, now we have already created this class, and now we are going to create a second member function to print this first name and last name, or full name. Okay, so we will define a second function called print full name, and this will not take any argument, and we are just going to return, or we are just going to print uh, the first name and last name. Okay, so we are going to print here first name. So to call any member function or member variable of a class, you just need to use self, and self just indicates that it's a member variable or member of a class. Okay, so always use self, and we are going to print self dot first name, which is the first name, and then we can just give a little space here to separate them, first name and last name, and then you can just take the last name and print it. Now in order to create an instance of a class, so how you can create an instance of a class? This is just a definition of the class, right? We have defined the definition of the class, right? Now in order to create the instance of a class, so that we can use this class, by creating the instance of the class. So whenever you want to end the class and you want to execute in this class, just remember that you start from the corner here, right? So, and don't forget about indentation in this class declaration. So when you start with no indentation here, then you are in the new line and you are outside the class. Okay, now in order to create a instance of the class or object of the class, we can just define the object name. For example, person name. So this is the object name or instance name of a class we want to give, and then is equal to the name of the class, and then these brackets. Okay, and this will create the object of person class with a name person name. Okay, so let's try to run the program and let's see if it contains any error or not. Save. Okay, and it doesn't contain any error, so it's running fine, but we want to use the member function of the class. So how we can use this member function of a class? We can use the member function of a class using this instance of the class or object of the class. Okay, so just take the object of the class, and in the next line we just copy the object of the class dot, and then we can see there are two options which are member functions of the class: print full name and set name. So I'm going to take set name of the class function. So this is the member function of a person class, and we are accessing this member function using the instance or object of the class. Okay, and in between we give dot separator, so that now this instance can call the member functions or member variable of the class. And now we can set the first name and last name. For example, programming is the first name and knowledge is the last name. Okay, so we have set the first name and last name of the person, and just remember that this is used as a default. So this will be automatically taken by your class, and these are the two important uh, you know two important argument which you need to pass, and this will be taken automatically. Okay, so self is by default for a member function invisible, in a sense that you just need to pass the other arguments except for the self argument. So first name we passed as programming and last name we passed as knowledge. So this is setting the first name and last name of a person. Now in order to print this name, we can once again use the instance or object of a class dot. We can call the second function of a class called print name, which takes no argument, right? And now let's try to save the program and run this. So run this, and what it's saying, it's saying that this member function which you are calling, which is print full name, doesn't have any argument, which is zero argument, right? Takes zero argument, but one was given, right? So I intentionally leave the self in this function so that we can see this error. So always remember, you have to at least pass self whenever you define a member function in a class. So even if it doesn't take any parameter or argument, you need to pass self to a member function. Okay. Now when I save the program and run it, it will run fine, right? And it prints the name programming space knowledge, which I wanted to print, right? So always remember few things. Whenever you define a member function in a class, always use self as a first argument and then give your rest of the argument. And even if your function or member function doesn't take any argument, you just or you must pass at least one argument, which is self. Okay, so on what is self? Self is just a pointer to the class instance. So this self is pointing to this person name, and this is called class instance. And whenever we create the class instance, it will assign this person here at the place of self, and then it will be name will be set as person name, which is this instance dot first name, person name dot last name, and then whenever we call this function, it will print person name dot first name, person name dot last name. So in this way you can use or you can create classes in Python. There is lot more in defining and creating or using classes in Python. This is just starting or create how to create a class in Python. So I will show you how to use other functionalities in class in later videos, and hopefully you understood the concept of the class. Hello guys, in the last video I have shown you how to use classes in Python. Now in this video I'm going to show you how you can use constructors and destructors with classes in Python. These constructor and destructor are also called initialization and deletion member functions of the class. So first of all, let's see how we can use constructor in Python. In the last video I have given you a small little example of a class and how to create a class, and we have created a person class and we have created two member function, one member function to set the values and other member function to print the name, right? So first member function we named it as set full name, and in this function we were passing two arguments, first name and last name, and this print full name member function we were using to print the name of the person. And then I have shown you how you can create an instance or object of a class like this, and how to use these member function like this using the instance of the class. Now I'm going to take the same example to show you how you can use constructor with this same class. So first of all, to define a constructor you just use normal function definition with def, and then you give double underscore init, then double underscore, and give the bracket and give colon here, and in here as any other member function you can perform any task. So for example I want to print something that our class is created, for example. So I'm just printing our class is created, not like this, but class is created, right? So first of all, what is the use of this constructor? Generally in programming languages, constructors are used to initialize the value. Okay, so whenever you create the instance of a class, so we are creating the instance of a class here. As soon as you create the instance of a class, this constructor is called immediately. So you don't need to explicitly call the constructor of a class. You may call it or you may not call it, but don't forget to give the self argument, as I have shown you in the last video, that you need to use this keyword self with every member function of a class, and this indicates to the instance of a class. So program a person name will be replaced by self here in the last video I've shown you. So as soon as I create an instance of a class, this init member function will be automatically called. So you don't need to explicitly call this member function. So I'm going to run this, save, run, and you can see here it gives us the result. Our class is created even though we haven't called our init member function explicitly. It's printing first this our class is created. That means as soon as you create this instance of a class, this member function is called, right? So always remember the constructor definition is reserved here. with double underscore in it, and this also ends with double underscore. So this is the reserved keyword in Python to call constructor. You cannot give any definition or any name to the constructor. It's reserved, which is this one. In the same way, we can use destructor to destroy the instance of a class. Okay. So, and destructors are also called whenever our instance is out of scope. So let me show you how you can call destructor first. So destructor also you can just define it as a normal function with two underscore del and these two underscores, and then just call self here keyword, and then give colon here, and then you can just uh, write the functionality of the code. So for example, I will print uh, I can print our class instance is destroyed. So our class object is destroyed, and this is also reserved in Python with double underscore del, and this also ends with double underscore. And this function is also automatically called whenever your class or class instance goes out of scope. Out of scope means that this uh, class instance is no longer used. So in here, after this code, our class instance scope is completed, because this is no longer used in further code, because there is no code, obviously, right? Then whenever this class or person name goes out of scope, this deletion member function will be called automatically, and it just basically the use of this destructor or deletion member function is to garbage collection kind of use. So it just collects the garbage or all the resources and destroy all the resources which are used by this instance, which is person name. So I will just save my program and run it, and you can see here whenever I just created this, it's not printing this deletion member message here, but whenever you use the instance of a class dot underscore underscore deleting, so underscore deletion member, and then whenever you run this, this is printed, our class object is destroyed. So whenever you use this deletion member function, it destroys all the resources which are used by your class instance. Okay, so this is the use of this destroyer or destructor. Now it's not compulsory that you cannot pass any argument with this initialization. You can pass argument. For example, I can pass any argument. For example, I want to pass ID of the person I'm using, or I want to print the name of. So I want to initialize the ID of a person like this. I can just pass this argument with my initialization member function, and then I can just use self dot id is equal to id, and then I can call this id in my destructor also. So for example, this destructor can also take some arguments. and we can call this self.id. For example, I will print this ID here, and then I can just print the message, right? So it's not necessary that our initialization or our constructor has to initialize with no argument. It can take any number of argument as an initialization. But whenever you give this argument in the initialization here, then whenever you create the instance, you need to pass that argument here. So we are creating the instance here, and because the initialization takes this one argument which is id, we are passing 5 as an id here in the initialization. Okay, so this is how you can initialize it. And now whenever you run your program, once again, you can see here our class is created once again, and as soon as this class is created, we are setting the ID of a person as we pass in the constructor, which is here, and then self.id is set here, and whenever we call the destructor, we are once again calling the ID of the person, which is this one, and then printing the message, this one, right? So in this way you can use constructor and destructor or initializer or and deletion. Hello guys, in this video I'm going to show you what is inheritance and what are subclasses and superclasses in Python. So we all know that Python is an object-oriented programming language, and inheritance is one of the most important concepts in object-oriented programming language. Now what is inheritance? Inheritance allows us to define a class in terms of another class, which makes it easier to create and maintain our application. So for example, you have created a class which is generic in nature, and you want to reuse it again and again in different situations. You can use inheritance to show or inherit some of the traits or all the traits from the class to your class which you want to make. So you don't need to write a class from the scratch. You can inherit from the superclass. The class from which we are inheriting is called a superclass, and the class which is inheriting is called a subclass. So let me give you an example. For example, I create a class which I call, this is a parent, okay, and this class has two values or two variables. Value 1 is equal to let's say it's a string. So I say this is value 1, and in the same way I will define value 2. This should be value, right? So I will define value 2 variable, which is the second member variable of this class, and this is value 2. Okay, now for example, I want to reuse the variables which are their member variables which are there in the parent class, and I want to create a second class, and I want to reuse these member variables in other class. How we can do it? So I will define a second class, for example class, and I will name it as child, and this class wants to reuse these member variables from the parent class. So what I can do is I can inherit from the parent class in the child class. And to inherit the parent class in the child class, we just use these two brackets, and inside these two brackets we just pass the name of the class from which we want to inherit. So in this case we want to inherit from this parent class, so we can just pass this parent class name and in the brackets, right? Now we can use this values from the instance of our child class. So for example, I don't want to do anything here. I can just write pass, and pass, if you don't know what is pass, pass is just a placeholder. So it doesn't do anything, but if suppose you don't want to implement your class and you want to leave your class as it is, then pass will help you to avoid any errors. So let's see what happens when we don't use pass here, and I will save my program and run it, and it says unexpected indent. This indent should not be here. Run it once again. So it shows an error. And what is the error? Because we haven't given a pass here, it expect, or Python expect that we define some definitions of member variables or member functions here. So what we can use is we can use pass in order to avoid any errors. Now whenever we want to make a child class instance, for example child like this is equal to, and we want to make the instance of this child class, we can make it like this. So we just can make the instance child. You can just give underscore to differentiate this instance from this class. But let's first create an instance of the parent class, and then we will create the instance of child. Parent, and parent is equal to parent. So we have created the instance of parent class, and from this instance we can call parent dot value 1, which is this one, and we just want to print this parent dot value 1. So we can just print, and inside our print we can just pass this parent dot print 1 here, and let's say we will define it this child class later. So I will just run this once again, and it prints this is value 1. Okay, in a similar manner you can call second value from parent, and this you already know, right? Now suppose child instance want to use value 1 and value 2. I create the instance of child, and because I'm inheriting from my parent class, this value 1 and value 2, which are member variables of this parent class, is available to use from the instance of child class also, because by inheritance we are allowing the superclass, which is this parent class from which we are inheriting. So the class from which we are inheriting is called superclass, and the class which is inheriting from superclass is called subclass. So from this instance we can call this values or variables from the parent class. So I can just once again copy this print value 1, but this time I will use the instance of child class. And you can see here I haven't implemented anything in the child class. accept the inheritance, right? So I will just run the program once again, and it prints this double times. So for example, I delete this to illustrate this example clearly. I will once again run this, and it prints this is value 1 and this is value 2, which is printed by the instance of child class, right? That means we can use the member variables or member values of parent class when we inherit from parent class to a child class, right? Now you can inherit from multiple classes. So for example, you have parent class 1, you have parent class 2, and you want to inherit from both the classes. You can inherit from parent 1 like this, comma, parent 2 like this. Okay, so you can even inherit from two classes or multiple classes at the same time. You just need to separate those parent class by this comma. Okay, so just remember this. So in this way you can use inheritance in Python, and I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please rate, comment, subscribe, and bye for now.